Good morning, everybody. Ugh. Welcome to episode 9 of Krav and Coffee. So we'll give everybody a couple minutes to jump on, and then we'll get started. Happy Father's Day to all you fathers out there, all shapes and sizes. Get all my tech stuff done. Share it everywhere that needs to be shared. Good morning, Ernie. Good morning, T. How are you? We'll put it there. Why not? Share it there too. Just sharing it to every group I'm part of. The more the merrier. Okay. So just a quick recap as to where we've been for these past 9 episodes. Krav and Coffee started because we weren't able to train. And I thought, well, why don't we talk about everything that goes into self-protection that doesn't include punching or contact with another person. And there's a hell of a lot. It's just not as flashy, so we don't talk about it as much. But let's start talking about it. So the layered learning approach that we're going with here, every week kind of builds on each other. So we originally started with, hey, Stephanie, good morning. We originally started with awareness. So being aware of what's around you, understanding what your baseline is, so that when something is off, then you're like, oh, wait, something's not right here. And that's important because your normal and my normal are very different. So I need to know what my normal is so that way I'm able to identify when something is abnormal. And that doesn't mean like, oh my God, something's wrong. Woo! It's just, all right, something's different here. And the example that I like to use is very like a common example of, you're in your neighborhood, the trees are growing and the stop sign you used to be able to see is now covered by a tree branch. Okay, that's not cause for like 5 alarms, but it's like, oh, hey, you can't really see that stop sign anymore. I need to contact whoever I need to contact to get that tree branch cut or do it myself. And when I come to this intersection, I need to be mindful that people coming through that way might not see that stop sign. So something as pedestrian as a stop sign is a great way to kind of understand what it means to be aware of what's going on around you and, take note. So be present, see what's going on. And, the world affects you. You can't just, box everything off and be somewhere else. No matter where you go, there's going to be some sort of interaction. And you have a right to, draw your line in the sand and be aware of what's going on around you and all that fun stuff. So awareness is where we started. And then we kind of went into process predators and, what does that mean if, someone isn't just abruptly coming up to you and grabbing you and pulling you somewhere? What if it takes a little longer and there's an interview process and there's a little bit of manipulation involved, which, ladies, that's probably what's going to happen. Like, yeah, there is the bad guy, the boogeyman lurking around the corner. But more often than not, your attacker is going to be someone someone you trust. So that's something to keep in mind. The mental game of self-defense is a big one. Um, and then we kind of led into how you're selected as an easy target, how to make yourself be not so easily selected. And from there, we went to mindset. And mindset has kind of spread us into all these different avenues. So, mindset is, for me at least, that switch that I go from the nurturer, the comforter, the mom, the wife, to, do you know what I have to do to you now? Right? There has to be a switch inside of your mind, a switch inside of your body that will take you from, I will protect you and nurture you, to, if it comes down to you or me, buddy, it's going to be me. So, and that is not something that you can just wake up with. Let me preface that. Some people, yeah. Some people have it, but most of us don't. So that's something you need to practice. How can you practice your mindset of, when I need to take care of myself, I'm going to have to do it? Just like you practice your fire drills, right? You practice, you go through scenarios in your head. So if you missed any of the weeks and any of those topics kind of, send up a signal for you, like, oh, I want to know more about that, you can go back my business page, my personal page, every Sunday at 10 o'clock. I've been on here chatting with you guys, so you can go back and you can watch them. From mindset, we talked about self-defense tools. So we talked primarily about pepper spray, and how pepper spray, although is a effective means of protecting yourself, it has to be done in conjunction with mindset. So the video that I showed was me actually getting pepper sprayed, and it hurt like hell. I'm not even going to pretend. It did what it was supposed to do. My eyelids kind of swelled. It was hard for me to see, straight ahead of me. So my gaze was down, and I wanted it to stop. It was the most awful feeling in the world. Well, I wouldn't say most awful feeling in the world, but it's not something I'd want to do again. But I continued to fight. I continued to throw punches. I continued to stay on my feet. So if my intent, well, let's just be real, my intent was to film a video for you guys. And filming a video for my people watching was enough to keep me fighting. Imagine the mindset of your attacker, right? They went through all this trouble to pick you because they thought that you'd be an easy target. You luckily get off maybe one spray across the eyes with your pepper spray, and now you think that's it? No, they've decided that you were something that they wanted, and they're going to keep fighting. And it might turn into an even more irrational fight because now they're in a crap ton of pain. Or they're not in any pain at all. It affects people differently. I was not one of the lucky ones. It didn't really hurt. I was one of the majority where it sucked. But there are people it doesn't affect. And, you have to think of the mindset of someone who's trying to attack you. They're not just the normal person, right? There's something else going on there. So could it be drugs? Could it be revenge? Something that kind of triggers that I must finish my, OODA loop. I must finish my directive. And you have to be really mindful of that. So self-defense tools like pepper spray are, I like to kind of put that in the same category with, hand to hand. And the reason I do that is because in my mind, there's a lot of gray, but then I'm also kind of an extremist where I have this black and white. And I feel like my go-to self-defense, self-protection is avoidance. I will win every fight I can avoid, right? I would much rather rely on my intuition and my awareness than having to beat somebody up. whether it be with a self-defense tool or with my own hands. So I choose avoidance, and I teach that all the time. And if it makes me look like a sissy, well, I'll be the poster child for that. That's fine with me, because in my mind, I want to go home to my family. I love my family. I've worked really hard for it. But if you need to go hands on, sometimes you don't have a choice. If you use pepper spray, or you use a punch, or you use an edged weapon, or you use a blunt weapon, or you have concealed carry and you use a firearm, it's not just one and done. There's no magic potion. There's no magic pill. You have to be, God, in those split seconds, you have to be so aware of what's going on, and so mindful of what you need to do that, you know, you have to prepare. You have to have plan A through Z. So, with the pepper spray, we talked about, yes, if you spray someone and they recoil because there's something coming at their eyes, if they have that reflex, that's a really great time then to hit them. Not to be like, woohoo, I got the pepper spray in their eyes. When they pull back, it'll open up this jaw and you hit them there as hard as you can. Hopefully, getting, the concussive force within your skull that will cause, best case scenario, a knockout. That would be great because it's easy to run away from someone who's unconscious, right? And then if if they keep coming at you, that one punch wasn't enough. What else are you going to do? What if, a lot of fun Krav Maga memes or kick them in the groin? What if that doesn't work? What are you going to do next? Like, do you have a next plan? Do you have a next strike in mind? So you have to have lots of plans. You have to not rely on just that one, magic pill. And, even I don't carry firearms. I don't have a concealed carry. I've used them. I've cleaned them. I've taken them apart and put them back together again. Made me feel better about using it because I understood the bits and pieces. But I work and I train with people who do carry, and it's like, it's not like they're just carrying one bullet, right? Does that make sense? There's a reason why there's a magazine. There's a reason why some people carry 2 firearms. It's because they know if they have to use it, that there's going to be a chance to have to use more than one bullet. Okay, so keep that in mind. Avoid. There's nothing wrong with saying that. There's nothing wrong with that being your go-to option. However, if you need to go hands-on, know that it's not like you're going to win. You're just going to lose less. Does that make sense? You were chosen for a reason. It wasn't because you were the biggest, strongest, ex-MMA fighter, and the bad guy's like, I want to square off with that guy. It's like, oh, look at that distracted, petite little woman who is walking funny because her coach put her through a really crazy kettlebell class on Wednesday, and now your hamstrings, like that, my hamstrings, I'm just speaking from experience, your hamstrings are tight, so you're walking a little funny, more slowly. Your balance is off. Maybe, sad thing here, but maybe you have your kids with you, which that's a funny thing to talk about. We'll get into that later because, that mama bear switch is a lot easier than I'm going to take care of myself switch. So just keep that mindset part in anything we ever talk about. Mindset is key. And then everything else is just the icing on the cake. So giving someone pepper spray or a knife or a firearm and being like, there you go. you're protected, is just as bad as saying, well, come to my class and punch a pad, and I'll teach you these 5 self-defense tricks that everyone needs to know to protect themselves. Mm-mm. No. You have to do your due diligence in your training. So one thing that I've come across as someone who teaches, women's self-defense seminars, come in for an hour and here's a little nugget, planting a seed. One thing that I've noticed is not every woman who comes to my class signs up for Krav. And, is it because I'm not a good teacher? It could be. It could be that we just don't jive. But it could also be that they're just not into training Krav Maga. They don't want to hit things. It hurts when they hit things, or they don't want anyone touching them, or they don't feel like they're in good enough shape to train. So, it's not always like, oh, well, I was abused or I was a victim. Now I'm a survivor and I can't train Krav because it triggers an emotion inside me that makes me uncomfortable. Yes, that happens too. But then there's also women who just don't want people touching them or sweating on them. And they'd rather get their exercise or their training in another place, or punching. They're pacifists. And they're like, I don't want to punch. I don't want to throw elbows. I don't want a knee. They're to each their own. Awareness can be universal. You can practice that on your own. Coaching helps, but actually coming into the gym and punching and kicking and biting and screaming and is not for everyone. So does that mean that that woman can't, or that man, whoever, can't fight off an attacker? I don't think so. I think that means we as instructors need to figure out a better way to protect our public, our students. And I caution just giving a tool, no matter what tool it is. I'm not hating on pepper spray. Okay. Knives make me nervous. And there are quite a few people that I know that have been told, just carry a knife for self-defense. And it's like, that could go really bad, really fast. Are you prepared? Are you prepared to actually stab someone? Are you prepared to retain that knife? Are you prepared to deploy that knife? People who carry knives for self-defense dress for their knives. It's not like, oh, those shoes look really cute with this dress. It's like, oh, all right. Well, if I don't put an Under Armour shirt on top of my loose fitting t-shirt, then when I go to deploy my knife, I could cut myself. Yeah. And before I leave my house, I deploy 6 different times to make sure I'm good. Do you do that with your self-defense tools? If you carry self-defense tools, how many times have you practiced? Right? So self-defense is not a fly-by-night, just, I took a self-defense class in college. Don't mess with me. Sometimes you either have it or you don't. But self-defense is something, it's a lifestyle. And it starts with awareness. And it develops into mindset. And then guess what, guys? You kind of have to be able to fight. You have to be able to move, and I choose kettlebells and Krav Maga as my form of movement because it makes me stronger. It tests my, ability to react under stress. And it's given me a community of some really smart people that I can grow and learn new perspectives and make myself safer and my family safer. So that's why I choose it. I would recommend it, but I'm not here to sell you Krav Maga lessons. I'm here to just talk to you about some of the realisms that that happen with defending yourself. So before I became a Krav Maga instructor, I was a physical therapist, and I still am a physical therapist. More on that to come. So the science behind movement always intrigued me. And it was, I guess it started back because I didn't play very many sports. I wasn't, my depth perception's a little off. So if anybody's ever held pads for me or sparred with me, you kind of get that. But I was a dancer. So ballet and modern, that was my outlet. And the movement patterns through ballet and modern kind of just translated right into the movement patterns of the human being, which translated right into the movement patterns of kettlebells. And honestly, guys, translated into the movement patterns of Krav Maga. So it's all kind of been that layered learning for me about how the body moves and what you can do with it. So today, what we're going to talk about is the body mechanics behind throwing strikes. So it might get a little technical. Go ahead and feel free to comment and be like, "Anne, I have no idea what you just said," and I'll either explain it or be like, "Don't worry about it. You don't need to know." Because there have been a couple studies done, and although size does matter, and we'll talk about some of the physics of that, you can train yourself to be a better striker without repetitive striking. Okay, so if you're like, I don't really like punching, okay, let's take it back. Let's take you back a notch. Let's work through some strength and conditioning that will build a foundation for this core strength that you can rotate around your axis, which is your spine. And then when you're finally a little bit more comfortable with the fact that you're going to have to strike if you're in a self-defense situation, at least you'll have some power behind that punch. That makes sense. Because and we say it as instructors, if you're going to hit, you better hit, and you got to hit the right targets. You can't just punch somebody in the shoulder and expect them to stop attacking you. You have to punch them in a place that's going to create an injury, and you have to do it hard. Now do it. And it's like, wait, what? I don't even want to touch someone's face, and you want me to punch them hard? It's like, yeah. So let's see. Some people, like I said, I mean, I have women who have that have come to me. We don't have, there really isn't walk-by traffic at our school. You have to drive to it. And I've had women come in and be like, I want to learn Krav Maga. I don't want the women's only class. I want to be in with the guys, partnering with the big guys. And, this is what I want. And kudos, ladies. That's awesome. Hey, you're speaking my language, right? That's kind of how I was. But there are also plenty of other people that are like, oh, I don't know about this. So let's meet our students. I think I have a couple different Krav instructors watching. Let's meet our students where they are. And it might be with core conditioning. So what I'm going to do, I have a PowerPoint for this one as well, so you don't have to just stare at me talking at you. It froze. Son of a.
As soon as your PowerPoint went on, it's hell
Hello. I apologize. Audio only. Can you hear me? Oh, you know what? It's really good that you couldn't hear me because I lost my train of thought and it was awful. Oh, good grief. So, yeah, I'm that's life, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, cool. Thank you all for letting me know that you couldn't hear me, but at least you could read some stuff. All right. So we're on the physics side of things. Power. What is power? Power is work over elapsed time. So if you don't have a lot of mass, but you can do it pretty quickly, then you can generate more power. So speed, speed and movement is very important. And then how can we be speedy in our movement? How can we move quickly? We move in the most efficient and reflexive way possible. Our body has movement patterns that have been there since birth. Think about it, guys. Everybody breathes, then everybody rolls over, then everybody comes to stand, and then everybody walks. Developmental milestones, right? Our body is hardwired to work well. And then we throw all these compensatory strategies on top of it. And it's like, oh, well, now my shoulder hurts and, you know, my hip flexors are tight. And it's like, well, if you're sitting at a computer all day, that's not the movement pattern that your body was designed to have. It's what we have to do because, hey, we need to work. But the cool thing about Krav is that it's based in reflexive movements. Movements that were a reflex were developed to be very efficient and very aggressive. So there's a whole history of the development of Krav Maga that begins with a gentleman named Moshe Feldenkrais. So any of my PT or movement science people have heard of the Feldenkrais movement or Feldenkrais method, and it's efficient movement. He finds a way to have that mind-body connection to recreate those natural movement patterns to move as efficiently as possible. And guess what, guys? He also helped develop Krav. So there's a nice little marriage there. So power, work over elapsed time. Then we have force, mass times acceleration. So again, we have movement, speed of movement with the acceleration. And then we have mass. If you are 120 pounds, you're not going to hit as hard as someone who has 280 pounds. It's just physics, right? But you can do something about that. You can use what you have to the best of your ability. Or if you want more mass, then you can go bulk up. So it's up to you. I'm more in the business of using what you have and making it work, as opposed to, you know, making you change, because you can really defend yourself as a small person. It just won't be as easily as a large person, right? So again, target. Smaller people are easier targets. There's a reason behind that. And then how do you take all 120 pounds of you and make that punch 120 pounds worth of force? It's called body sponsorship. You have to put your body behind it. It can't just be biceps and triceps. Okay. You're going to have to bring it from the ground all the way up. All right. So we'll talk about that. Now I'm hoping I don't lose you guys when I go here. So sponsorship, all right. Whoa. No. Wow. The technical difficulties today have been awesome. Where am I? All right. So, oops. So what we were talking about before and reflexive movement in there, the first dot is supposed to be Feldenkrais. So there should be an F there. I apologize for that. What movement feels easier? Be aware of how your movement, and then it's kind of so on the sciencey physical therapy side of things, we call it like a motor neuron pattern. So when the brain is telling the muscles how to contract, the muscles contract, they move the skeletal system, and then you've created this movement with like the Feldenkrais method and some other types of more meditative kind of movements. It's a little bit of just like taking your brain from your body or from your head into your body and feeling those movements. And the more connected you are, the more efficient it is when you can block out all the extra noise. And then body sponsorship. So this is the fun stuff. So you have ground reaction force, thoracic rotation, creating effective mass, and then the muscular contraction, relaxation, contraction. So these are just points. We'll get into what they mean. Let's do it. Whoa, or we can go backwards. All right. I'm actually going to, let's talk first about that reflexive movement again. When we teach Krav, the whole part of, all the Krav instructors understand the reflexive movement of Krav. Sometimes the initial defenses that we teach aren't the most effective, but they're the most reflexive. And we have our students do that because it's reflexive. It's easier. It's the path of least resistance. It's, they don't have to think about it. It just kind of happens. And then when we have, warm-ups where we need to get our students ready. I'm sorry. Can you turn that down, please? Thank you. I'm just getting feedback. So when we want to warm our students up and get them ready to do whatever movement we want them to do, specifically for me, it's Krav, then we have these compensatory strategies I was talking about before, from sitting where your glutes are kind of weak and your shoulders are kind of rounded forward and you have this impingement. You have to kind of address that in your students before you go into punching and kicking, or else it's not going to be the best movement pattern for them, and could actually cause injury. So when you warm your students up, you want to think about how you can get back to those developmental movement patterns. So there's different planes of movement, and a lot of times we stay in that sagittal and frontal plane, where both feet are parallel on the ground and you're moving forward and backwards, bending your knees, standing up. So think of like deadlifts, squats, bench presses. So much of that stays in that movement pattern plane. So we want to think about how those movements that we do on the transverse plane, where there's rotation involved. With that rotation comes an extra element of that diagonal body conversation. So my right shoulder needs to be able to talk to my left hip, and my left shoulder needs to be able to talk to my right hip. And not only does it have to move my body, but I have to be able to balance through it. I'm just going to go kind of through this because this has been a fun Krav Coffee for me. Oh my gosh. So we have the kinetic chain and ground reaction force. What does that mean? Foot to fist. So if you've taken classes, if you've taught classes in striking, you know that you have to put weight through that, that back foot. You have to rotate through the ball of the foot, which generates this power that goes through your body and ends up through your punch. So ground reaction force is simply the force that you apply from your body to the earth, and then what the earth applies back to you. And that, if you're just standing still, then that force is kind of equal, right? And then if you decide you want to walk forward, and your foot moves, and there's this friction that moves your body forward on the earth. If all we did was move our body forward on the earth, we would just be walking. So how do we translate that force from the ground to our fists? So, we just don't move forward. And that comes from rotation. As we rotate through the ball of the foot, we can take that power up and then translate that through the rotation of our upper body, and then the arm comes out and you can punch. So we're taking that ground reaction force and using it to punch. So if you think about anytime you've contracted a muscle, right, the joint has gotten smaller. So if you're standing there doing a bicep curl, you have a nice long bicep, and then you contract, and your fist comes up to your shoulder, and everything's shorter and tighter. So how are we going to be able to extend our body quickly to throw a punch if we're contracting? So there's that paradox. You want to contract, you want to have that forceful contraction of your muscles in order to throw a really strong punch. But the faster and stronger you contract, the smaller the joint movement is, right? And the slower it is. So there's a paradox there. And there was a study done. There was a study done by quite a few people, and there is a works cited page here, so you guys can look up the studies, that talks about this contract, relax, contract. So in order to throw a strong punch, you have to be able to contract your muscles quickly to initiate the movement. Then you need to be able to relax, and then you need to be able to contract again. So one example that I use for this for my cross training is the kettlebell swing. So you get set up for your kettlebell swing. You need to contract your glutes and your core, and the bell swings to the top, and you're in a plank. And then you have to relax. You have to let gravity take that bell and let it swing back between your legs through your hips before you contract again. So it's not just punching. It's hard to do in punching. When we start to punch, when we start to train strikes, especially newer students, how tight do you feel? How tight do your students look? Their traps are engaged, their shoulders are up, they're not breathing. If they're not breathing, there's no relaxation. So what can you do? Can you work just, an isometric contraction into relaxation, into an isometric contraction again? So wall sit. Let's talk about wall sits. They stink, but a lot of people have done them. So you lean up against the wall and you slide your butt down, and you sit there without a chair, just your feet on the ground and your back against the wall, and you're in this contraction. Your muscles are tight and they're holding you there, and then you get up and you run, or you get up and you kick, or you jump. So what you're doing is you're holding this tight contraction, and then you're asking your body to move again. And then I would say go back to that wall sit to finish it. These are all different kinds of ways to creatively build this contract, relax, contract cycle of movement that your students need to know how to do in order to throw a strong punch, but they never have to punch. It's just strength training, right? It's, something that everybody who's looking to exercise is looking for. Exercises, training, not punching, not violence. So, keep that in the back of your mind, instructors and students who are looking to get better at building that contract, relax, contract. All right. So then once we've built this contract, relax, contract, how do we then translate that into our training specifically for our strikes? So there was a study done in 2010, I believe, and it was the effect of core training on distal limb performance during ballistic strike maneuvers. So what specifically about that contract, relax, contract cycle gets you that strike force and that strike velocity? So if you're looking at a timeline, we have new beginners coming in. We're going to work this, whatever body weight, weight training, kind of exercise program. You start them with this contract, relax, contract programming, and then once they've graduated from that, now how can we translate that more specifically to our strikes? And within this study, there were 12 Muay Thai fighters, and they divided them into 3 different groups. So you have isometric, dynamic, and control. The control group, no, they didn't receive any intervention at all. The isometric, it was, so isometric is kind of like a static pose. So think of a plank. And then dynamic is, movement through the contraction. So throwing a medicine ball and catching it. So there's that contraction, generation of power, throwing, and then catching it, contraction of power, and then stabilizing. So that would be more dynamic. And they had 6 weeks of this, and they weren't allowed to do any other core exercises. And they studied if their jab, their cross, their rear knee, or their jab cross combination changed based on the intervention that they received. So the results were pretty interesting. So through the isometric training protocol, the jab power, the impact force of the jab, which is your lead strike, so if you're right-handed, it would be your left, increased about the same for both protocols. The knee force was actually almost twice as much with the isometric protocol. And then the jab cross, or the cross, the right, was increased by 27% with isometric training, but with dynamic, nothing. There was nothing significant. So you think about your cross, that's the power. All right, the jab is just fast. All right, so it kind of just needs to pop out there. But your cross, that's your full body rotation where you're bringing that right in, or your left. So it's your dominant strike. When you talk about carrying your keys or carrying your groceries, you don't ever want to put them in your dominant hand. It needs to be ready to go, right? At least I've heard that. So if you're looking to increase that dominant hand, the isometric training protocol seems to be a better choice for more impact force. However, when we get into velocity, how quickly you can get that strike out, the dynamic training actually, which makes sense because you're training the movement, the strength through movement. The dynamic training protocol provided the most increase. So, you want to strike hard, but sometimes if there's not a whole lot of oomph behind you, if you are a smaller massed person, then quick strikes might be what you need to do, because you might need to kind of rapid fire those strikes to overcome your attacker to get to a point where your strike will hit and create the injury that you're looking for. So let me see. I think I might just, yeah. And here's the works cited, guys. These are the articles. The first one was done in Thailand, boxers. There was a small sample size. There were only 3 of them. The second was elite martial artists. And then the last one was Muay Thai fighters again. So, these aren't just everyday people, but they're people who need to strike all the time. So it kind of, they didn't have to teach them how to strike, which is why they used them. All right. So I would like to get myself back on camera here, and I don't know if I'll be. Yeah, I don't know. Bear with me, everyone. Ooh, can you hear me and see me? So, what's the point? There was a lot of research jargon, I guess, in this conversation. But what's the take-home message? What's the point? The studies that people are doing now are looking into what you can do for your core to generate more power. So if the researchers, if the movement specialists are like, let's look at how we're striking and improve the ability to do that, then you as instructors or you as just a common, everyday person can incorporate that into your self-defense plan. So if I know that I need to be able to move quickly to generate power within my core to kind of rapid fire my strike should I need to do it. I'm not ready to strike yet, but I want to have that speed of movement. Then when I go in and talk to my personal trainer, or when I go to the gym, then I think about, well, how can I do that? What kind of dynamic movements? Is a bicep curl going to improve my function? Or is it just going to improve the size of my bicep? That functional movement pattern. How can we use that transverse plane, that rotation, instead of just this all day? So as you're training, be a little bit more mindful of what you're training for. Aesthetics are great. You want to look good. You have an idea of what looking good looks like. But why not put that look to work? Why not use the strength training, all the hours you spend in the gym, to make you less of a target, harder to attack, and harder to fight off should you need to do it? Do you need to practice the stress and the actual striking and the defenses to protect yourself? Yes. I'm not saying don't do that. All I'm saying is, if you're just not there yet, once you've improved your awareness, the next step would be to improve your movement. So your movement would be core strengthening with dynamic movement, right? So sit-ups aren't going to cut it either, guys. My mode of training that is kettlebells. So the cool thing about kettlebells is that you're the machine, right? You're not on a machine. You've become the machine, and the bell is what's causing that machine to work. The swinging motion of the kettlebell swing will give you that contract, relax, contract. You're able to work anti-rotation to build your rotational strength. You're not locked into a bar so that you can stagger your feet, rotate your movements. There's a lot that you can do to help your body prepare for the day you step into that Krav Maga, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym and go, I want to add this to my toolbox to protect myself. It's a lifestyle, guys. It's not, I've taken a seminar and now I can defend myself. If you're going to strike good. In the words of Bas Rutten, you need to be able to take the power from the ground, rotate it through your torso, and then end with whatever hard part of you hits whatever soft part of them to create injury. so that you have more time and more options to get away and get to safety. Um, you want to also keep in mind that if you can avoid it, I still go back to this. If you can avoid it, it'll be a much easier fight. It's interesting to hear different people talk about it. But you're not going to win. You're going to lose less. It's a fight. Your attacker is always active until you render them inactive. So if someone is going to physically put hands on you, and you're going to physically put hands on them, it's not going to be an easy fight. Just like if someone is emotionally or mentally abusing you, it's not going to be an easy fight. If you were listening in last week, we talked with Amelia from the Domestic Violence Center of Chester County, and it's not just, well, I've had enough of this abuse and I'm leaving. 4 to 7 times. It is the statistic for how many times the women try to leave, or the whoever, women or men, can be involved in a domestic violence scenario. So it's not easy once you're involved in the emotional fight, the mental fight, or the physical fight. So train yourself to be as strong and as confident as you can, with multiple action plans, and then continue to look around and see what your world is and how you're interacting and how you're allowing the world to interact with you. So I'll leave you with this other nugget of information that I feel is important for us to understand. Boundaries are something that you set, and rules are something you set for other people. I used to be really, really big and don't let anyone cross your boundaries. People aren't going to cross. You're going to cross your boundaries. You're going to let those boundaries, if I say you need to stay there, or I'm leaving and you don't stay there and I don't leave, that boundary was my fault. I let that fall. But my rule is that I give other people, and other people can either choose to listen to your rules or not. So it's your space. Define it, protect it, and interact with everything else as you see fit. So my house, my rules. Keep that in mind. Maintain your house. Train it, and train it well. You can get big biceps from training functional mobility and not just bicep curls. So look into it. Look into what kind of trainers you're training with, instructors. Think about what you're really giving your students. Can you give them a little extra value, a little more bang for your buck by just changing your programming a little bit? The stronger you are, the better you move, the better odds are in your favor. So that's my spiel on how to punch hard. Let's see if we have any questions. I'm just going to say hi to everybody. So Katie, Elisa, Michael, Monica, Shamika, Kim, Jeff, thank you all for leaving comments. Maria, how are you? Tim Smith, Timmy, Patrick, Pete, Kevin, Michael, Sandeep, how are you? Greg, Eddie, hey Eddie, Johnny, woohoo, UK Fit, Mark, Jameson, Danny, Melissa Kraus, my first physical therapy mentor and a badass. Talk about someone who knows her boundaries and is cool with you not crossing them. Melissa, you were amazing. I hope everything's good with you. Ed, Brian, Yee, Glenn, Gabriel, Foss, Nick. If you guys need t-shirts, check out Nick Friends at Frag Out Clothing Company. He is the man. Nancy. Hey, Nancy, how are you? Kim. All right. And T, my buddy. I couldn't do this without you, T. I log in and I see you, and I'm like, yes, T's here. Um, and Jeff. I think I said Jeff. Jeff Crow. Yes. So thank you for bearing with my technical difficulties, and letting me be human, and also, listening to what I have to say. um, it's my pleasure and my honor to jump on here and talk for an hour every week. And I hope you guys get something out of it. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, shoot me an email, leave it, private message me through Facebook. And, we can tailor these talks to things that affect you. This is just my general like brain dump of this is what I've seen and this is what I think needs to be talked about. So do your functional mobility, work in the transverse plane, move well, move often, and be aware of your surroundings. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day and happy Father's Day. See you next week.